I have heard every version of this promise. One old-fashioned cooking trick will make your food taste like you were raised by angels in a mountain kitchen. Well, I am Silas Crow, and I was raised close to my mama, pop, and grandmama here in Appalachia. I love those family lessons, but I also know the truth. A good trick works because there is a reason behind it. So today I am testing the methods grandmama used most often. The ones that make biscuits tender, beans better, cornbread crisp, cast iron dependable, and everyday food taste cared for instead of hurried. First test, cold fat and a light hand for biscuits. Grandmama never treated biscuit dough like bread dough. She wanted flaky layers, not a wrestling match. The fat stayed cold, whether it was butter, shortening, or lard. She cut it into the flour until there were small, uneven pieces left behind. Then she added cold buttermilk or milk just until the dough came together. The trick was stopping early. The more you knead biscuit dough, the more gluten develops, and the tougher the biscuit becomes. I tried one batch the careful way and one batch the impatient way. The careful batch was gently patted, folded a few times for layers, and cut straight down with a cutter. The impatient batch was worked until it looked perfectly smooth. No surprise, the gentle batch rose with tender layers, while the overworked one was edible, but tighter and more bread-like. The lesson is not that biscuits need a secret ingredient. They need restraint. If the dough feels a little shaggy, you may be doing it right. Second test, preheat the pan for cornbread. This one is famous for a reason. Put a well-seasoned cast iron skillet in the oven while it heats. Add a little oil, bacon drippings if you use them, or another suitable fat only when the pan is hot. Then pour in the batter carefully. The batter should sizzle at the edges. That early heat begins building a crisp crust before the center sets. The cool pan cornbread was fine. The hot pan cornbread had the browned edge grandmama prized, crisp underneath, tender in the middle, and sturdy enough to hold beans or soup. Watch the hot fat, use an oven mitt, and do not overfill the skillet. A cast iron handle stays hot longer than your memory does, so mark it with a towel or keep everyone warned. Third test, let beans take their time, but season with judgment. Dried beans are cheap, filling, and forgiving, but they are not fast. Soaking can shorten cooking time and may help some people digest them more comfortably, though it is not a magic cure. Rinse and sort beans first, discarding stones or damaged beans. Then soak overnight or use a quick soak method, drain if you choose, add fresh water and simmer until tender. Grandmama did not dump every seasoning in at the beginning. Acidic ingredients like tomatoes or vinegar can slow softening, so she often waited until beans were tender before adding them. Salt is more flexible than the old stories say, but adding a heavy hand of salty cured meat or broth at the beginning can make it harder to judge the final dish. I cooked one pot patiently at a quiet simmer and another at a rolling boil. The gentle pot stayed more intact and creamy. The hard-boiled pot split more easily. Slow does not mean weak. It means controlled. Fourth test, save the starchy cooking water when it serves the dish. The water from boiled potatoes contains starch, and a little of it can help mashed potatoes come together smoothly. Pasta water can do something similar for a sauce, but this is not a commandment to pour cloudy water into everything. Use it a spoonful at a time. In mashed potatoes, add warm butter and warm milk or cream as you like, then use reserved potato water only if the texture needs it. Do not beat potatoes to death with a blender or food processor unless you want a gluey result. A masher, ricer, or gentle hand mixer is kinder. Fifth test: dry the surface before you try to brown it. Grandmama knew this without quoting kitchen science. If chicken, pork chops, mushrooms, or vegetables are wet, they steam before they brown. Pat food dry, preheat the pan, do not crowd it, and leave it alone long enough to form color. I tested crowded mushrooms against mushrooms cooked in a single layer. The crowded pan leaked liquid and simmered. The single-layer pan browned and concentrated its flavor. That is not fancy cooking. It is giving heat a chance to do its work. Sixth test: use bacon grease with care, not as a personality. In my grandmama's kitchen, rendered bacon fat was a flavoring and a cooking fat, stored cleanly and used with intention. A teaspoon in greens, beans, or cornbread can bring a smoky richness, but it is still fat, and it is not the only way to make food taste good. Olive oil, butter, neutral oil, smoked paprika, onions, garlic, broth, and herbs can all do useful work. The tested trick is this: use a strong ingredient in a measured amount so it supports the food instead of turning every dish into the same dish. Seventh test: brown onions slowly and salt in layers. A rushed onion is sharp. An onion cooked patiently over moderate heat becomes sweet, savory, and useful in beans, gravy, potatoes, cornbread dressing, soup, and nearly anything that begins in a skillet. I made one batch hot and fast and another low and slow. The first browned in spots and stayed harsh in others. The second softened evenly, picked up color, and made the kitchen smell like somebody had thought ahead. Salt in layers means tasting as you go. Add a little to onions, taste the broth, taste the vegetables, and then adjust near the end. This is especially important when you use ham, bacon, bouillon, canned tomatoes, cheese, or packaged stock, all of which may already bring salt. Grandmama's food tasted seasoned, not salty, because she paid attention before the last minute. Eighth test: a pinch of baking soda can change a pot of greens, but it is not the best default. Some cooks add a tiny amount to greens to soften them or preserve a brighter color. I tested it. It can speed softening, but too much can leave a strange taste and reduce the fresh character of the vegetables. A better everyday method is to wash greens thoroughly, cook them in a small amount of liquid with aromatics, and give sturdy greens the time they need. If you use baking soda at all, use a very small amount and understand what it changes. The famous trick passes only with a warning label. Ninth test: cast iron is maintained by use, not worship. A cast iron skillet does not need to be feared. Wash it promptly, dry it completely, and leave a very thin film of oil if the surface needs it. Avoid leaving it wet or soaking for long periods. For stuck food, use hot water, a stiff brush, or a little coarse salt as a scrubber, then dry and re-oil lightly. Modern dish soap in a small amount is not an automatic disaster for a well-seasoned pan, but harsh soaking and neglect are what cause trouble. I cooked eggs in a properly warmed, lightly oiled skillet and in a cold one. The warmed pan released better and cooked more evenly. Cast iron rewards patience. Bring it up to temperature gradually. Use enough fat for the food, and remember that it holds heat after you turn the burner down. 10th test: make gravy from the brown bits, but cook the flour. After frying chicken or browning meat, the brown bits in the pan hold flavor. Pour off excess fat. If there is too much, leave enough to make a roux, Stir in flour and cook it until the raw flour smell fades. Then add liquid gradually while whisking. The key is heat control. If the pan is screaming hot, flour can burn before you have a chance. If the liquid goes in all at once, lumps may form. Grandmama poured slowly, stirred calmly, and adjusted thickness with more broth or milk. For food safety, remember that gravy made with pan drippings needs to be cooked properly, held hot if serving, and refrigerated promptly afterward. Do not leave a big bowl of gravy sitting on the counter through a long afternoon. The good old ways work best when they meet common sense. 11th test. Use a thermometer for meat, even when your elders cooked by feel. My pop could judge a lot by touch and time, but a thermometer is not an insult to experience. It is a tool. Cook poultry to a safe internal temperature. Use current food safety guidance for the meat you are serving, and let large cuts rest when appropriate so juices settle. The old trick here is paying attention. The modern improvement is measuring what matters. 12th test. Rest and reheat with purpose. Fried chicken, cornbread, biscuits, and roasted vegetables all change after they leave the heat. A few minutes of rest let steam settle and surfaces firm up. For leftovers, reheat until hot throughout and avoid repeatedly warming and cooling the same dish. Grandmama saved food carefully because wasting it was unthinkable, but careful saving is not the same thing as leaving it out all day and hoping for the best. So, what did the famous tricks prove? Cold fat and a gentle hand do make better biscuits. A hot skillet does make crisper cornbread. Slow onions, dry surfaces, controlled heat, and a patient pot of beans are real advantages. The rest is judgment. Taste as you go, use strong flavors carefully, and let a thermometer help when safety is on the line. One more small trick is to set up before you cook. Read the recipe through, measure what needs measuring, set out a clean spoon for tasting, and have a plate ready for cooked food. It sounds almost too simple to mention, but it prevents burned garlic, forgotten salt, and the kind of frantic reaching that makes a hot pan dangerous. Grandmama called it getting your ducks in a row. In a small kitchen, a little preparation makes room for calm. That is why I still come back to Grandmama's cooking. It was not complicated, and it was never careless. It was a way of noticing. Notice the heat. Notice the texture. Notice whether the pan is ready. Notice whether the food is safe. If you take nothing else from this kitchen, take that. Good cooking is not a bag of secrets. It is attention, practiced often enough that it starts to feel like home.